The big problem was not the 6 billion, but the hundreds of billions of dollars they allowed them to sell oil.
President Obama will be ashamed. Secretary Albright will be ashamed. President Biden will be ashamed. Blinken will be ashamed.
You know, when Biden won, I said Trump is now sitting on Jumhuriyat Islami, an Islamic Republic, with his knees, and I hope Biden does not get off of it, off their chest. And he got off their chest.
With all confidence, what Ayatollah Khamenei is most afraid of is not Trump, it's the people of Iran.
It's November 14th, 2024. This is Roqe. Well, hi there. Welcome to episode 346 of Roqe. I'm Jian. Hello to you from Toronto. Hello to you from Canada. Salam Dostan Aziz. Durud bar Shoma. Hope you are doing well. Wherever you are tuning in from around the world, hello, smart Pegah.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
1 week into the presidency of Donald Trump. Well, actually, he's not president yet. 1 week after the election.
After the elections. And I'm still wearing red.
You're still wearing, well, you're in Canada. It's liberal
Yes,
red,
exactly.
which is on brand for you. Today, something of a debate, the Trump debate vis-a-vis Iran and Iranians. We've called this episode, Will Trump Foster Regime Change in Iran? It's a little reductive. Obviously, Donald Trump by himself is not going to create the revolution in Iran. But basically, is a Donald Trump presidency, is the change at the top of the administration in the United States going to help create the conditions where there could be change in Iran? Obviously, there are people who think it will. Obviously, there are people who think it won't.
Right.
And so we've got two people from either side of the aisle in America, two Iranian-American prominent commentators, one a Democrat, Arash, Ari Aramesh, who... Well, I'm actually curious to hear what his position is now. He wanted a Biden administration victory. He wanted, I guess, Kamala Harris to win. He's part of the Democratic Party. Although I know he has had issues with the Democrats in terms of the Iran policy over the last few years. So we'll have him on one side. On the other side, a well-known Republican who has been very active in American politics, including serving the 43rd, 44th, and 45th presidents. That will be the last Trump administration, Bijan Kian, who will join us, and I think he's probably over the moon in terms
election
of
results.
And will no doubt say that Trump's going to fix everything.
Yes.
So it's going to be interesting, and I'm very much looking forward to two guys that we've wanted them on the show before. We've always had scheduling issues, and to have them both on at once
time.
after a week hence, and honestly, I mean, in terms of American election coverage, there's more than enough happening around the world in newspapers, on podcasts, and cable TV networks that are devoted 24/7 to this stuff, including the new, Trump's picks for who he wants to be, Secretary of the Homeland Interior or whatever, but to specifically speak about Iran policy and how this could affect Iranians outside of Iran and inside Iran, and how this president and how Iranian voting choices, something we talked about last week. I led off the show last week with, don't be surprised that many Iranians support Trump. How that, has there been a realignment of support? Have Iranians who were previously kind of polarized on different sides, have they moved behind Trump almost, globally, if not in the United States? And what are we seeing? And I know that there are many Iranians who didn't support Donald Trump becoming president again, and who are as upset as many other Americans, et cetera. But to have that conversation vis-a-vis Iran and Iranians is what we're doing today. I was thinking about you because you're a liberal.
Yes.
I think in this country you're a large L liberal.
Well,
you were
historically,
you've been, and so I'm guessing. If you don't mind me outing you,
Go
you were, because you can say you don't want to.
No, it's okay.
If you were in the United States, and able to vote last week, unlike most of our audience at Roqe Live who cheered for Donald Trump.
Yes.
I'm guessing that you would actually vote for the Democrats, right?
I would, because here's the thing. I still can't get my head around how Donald Trump is the president of the United States of America, one of the most powerful countries in the world. I mean, let's take a look at his track record. He was president before, right? He is the third president to be impeached. The first.
You've actually made notes
oh, yeah,
defending you. You're looking at your computer. Okay, yeah,
I've got stats on this. He's the.
I shouldn't have told you. I was going to ask you about how you would have voted. Go ahead.
He's the first president who was impeached twice. And let's talk about his policies, whether it's immigration, whether it's, foreign policy. I know we're going to talk about foreign policy today.
The impeachment could have been, I mean, if you're a Trump supporter, you say that's just political. That's just the Democrats.
I mean, I don't know about that, but okay,
Right.
let's put that aside
Yeah.
and let's talk about foreign policy, because that's something that we're actually going to talk
Yeah.
about on the show today. If you look at his track record, I mean, all he did in his term is he emboldened dictators. So if we're talking about what he's going to do for Iran,
He's going to embolden Khamenei.
I mean, I don't know, because he's been so wishy-washy with everything that he said, even about the Islamic Republic.
That's actually something I want to bring this up with Bijan Kian, that Donald Trump, I have the quote, in September, he said, I'm ready to do a deal with
Right,
Iran.
exactly.
We have to do a deal. And so you kind of go, well, okay, well, is this the panacea? Is this the guy who's going to solve everything and take a harder line? But the presumption is that he will, and Marco Rubio.
That's the presumption.
So how are you feeling now? Are you one of these people who's
I'm
like that? Your
scared.
hair is on fire?
Well, no, my hair's not on fire, but
Okay.
I am scared for what's to come, because, if we're looking at some of the other things that happened during his presidency, hate crimes were up 28% while he was president. If you talk about the way that he as president talked about minorities, the way that, he took, let's talk about abortion. Let's talk about minority rights. There's so many things. It's not just foreign policy.
Right.
And as an Iranian Canadian, I'm worried about the implications for me here in Canada.
One of the things I want to ask these guys is how, in their experience, how much do you think Iran policy factors into how Iranian expats or Iranians in the diaspora vote? Because I agree. I mean, for example, I'm pro-choice. I've
Right.
never made any bones about that. I would never want to vote for a candidate who is not
Absolutely.
pro-choice. But does that get trumped, if you will, by Iran policy? These are the things that people are weighing, right? I suspect, we learned this, right? Not just for the Iranian community, but if you're a political junkie like you and I are, we've learned that all kinds of groups out there who might be, say, pro-choice still voted for Trump
Still voted for
for
Trump.
other reasons.
Yeah.
And I think when it comes to Iranians, it might be the failure of the Biden administration on Iran policy and holding this regime to account and all of that.
Yeah.
So we'll you want to say more?
I want to say one more
Okay.
thing. I think one other thing, and I think you and I have talked about this. We talked about it after that Roqe Live incident where there was a unanimous
It's an
kind of
incident now
Well, I mean,
that the
that's what
audience supported.
I would
It's
call
an
it
incident.
that now
Yeah.
in light of the election.
Yeah.
But I think you're right. And one of the things is the shortcomings of the Biden administration that has led to
Yeah.
this kind of turn
Yeah.
in Iranians becoming so pro.
Yeah, that's a bit of a
Republican.
fuck you.
Yeah.
You're gonna continue to enable slavishly run after a deal with the regime. We're not good with that. I think that I understand that sentiment.
Yeah.
Of course, I don't know how I would vote.
Yeah.
But
You're not going to say, are you?
I never say. I never say, but people love to speculate.
Yes.
I'm all over the map. According to some people, I'm a crazy revolutionary leftist, and others, I'm a monarchist or whatever. So, we had an event here before we get to this. So
Yes.
Bijan Kian and Ari Aramesh coming up. Very much looking forward to sharing that interview with everybody out there. We had an event here last night in the Roqe Hub. I gotta say, we've been doing the show here. This end of this room, this big space is our Roqe studio,
Right.
where we do the show, where we're doing it right now. And if you're listening to us on a podcast where the majority of our audience is, you can now watch the whole show on YouTube. So switch over to Roqe Media on YouTube if you want to watch, if you want to see Pegah. Yeah. See Pegah while you're listening to Pegah. Now, we didn't used to do the full show on YouTube.
Yes.
We just had it on audio on YouTube. But we also have this big main space here where we want to do these modest kind of events. And so last night was the first of those, which was a book launch for a gentleman named Seper Haddad, with which some of our audience may remember. He's been on Roqe before for his first book, an award-winning book, a fabulous book. And now he's got he's an Iranian-American author. He's actually a musician. He was part of Shaheen and Seper, this duo that were very successful. But this is his second book. He's an Iranian-American based in D.C., and he's written a book that's just been published called The Harmless and Necessary Cat. And it's about Iran. It's the story of a family in Iran. It's a fictional tale, but it's kind of based on a true story that I suspect has to do with his family. In fact, it does. We talked about it in the onstage interview last night. A family in Iran during World War II.
Wow.
And World War II in Iran was colored by an Allied occupation of Iran. The Allies occupied Iran, the British and the Russians.
Right.
And then eventually the Americans as well. What's fascinating about this is I'm a history major. I mean, I'm a poli-sci history major. I went to school for, and I pride myself on thinking I know history, and I know a fair bit about World War II, I would think. I only know about World War II through a Western lens. So I know what happened in Europe.
Yeah.
I know where the Nazis went into Poland or France or the bombing of London. I know about the Japanese bombing Pearl Harbor. I know about Hiroshima. I know about all of that. I don't know about Iran. We were never taught about Iran.
Right.
We were never taught what happened in Iran. And it turns out in Iran they weren't taught. They're not taught about this too. I mean, if last night was there's about 50 people here who came for this book launch, and we had this event here. It was a capacity here. And when I asked them, you were not able to make it last night. We should out you while you're silent on this. But which is quiet. We missed you. But when I said how many of you knew this story, even those who grew up in Iran haven't learned that in fact in World War II in Iran, millions of people died.
Wow.
I mean, this arguably up to a quarter of the population of Iran died as a consequence of the Allied occupation of Iran. Why? Because there was a famine. Why? Because the Russians cut off the ability for food to get to the Iranian people so that they could feed Russian soldiers.
Right.
It's a famous story for some Iranians, but not the majority. I mean, it's sort of written out of history or hard to remember, and this is pretty big stuff. So Seper has written a book, a very engaging book about this family, but that takes you through this history. So he was here last night, came up from D.C., and we did an onstage interview, and we talked about the book, and we shot it and recorded it, and that's gonna be next week's show. And we're looking forward to people hearing it. But and it's a great new book, The Harmless and Necessary Cat, which you can now get on Amazon and your regular places where people buy books now, which apparently isn't in stores anymore. Nobody buys any books anywhere except for online, but that's where you can get it. Seper Haddad's new book, The Harmless and Necessary Cat, and he'll be on the show next week. Last night's conversation, we taped and we'll edit it and put it together and put it out next week.
I'm looking forward to it because I did miss last night, and I was actually so upset that I missed last night because it's exactly the type of thing that I would have loved.
You could have worn your red shirt.
I know.
Supporting the Liberal Party of Canada
and Donald Trump.
And Donald Trump. Okay, before we get to our guests today and the great Trump debate, a couple of things on the roundup. I mean, a dark incident that you and I talked about before the show, and so we can't really not talk about this. Yeah. It's so difficult with Iran, as we've talked about. Sometimes we get letters saying, why are you guys always talking about politics and nasty things that happen in Iran? And we don't always. There's a lot of things that we don't, we can't get to everything. But something like this happens, and we think we got to say something about it, and I'm curious to hear your take on it. So there's a guy named Kianoosh Sanjaris,
yes,
who this week, a couple of days ago, took his own life and kind of live tweeted what he was going to do. An activist, a political prisoner in Iran. So talk to me about what you have garnered from this incident.
I mean, I think like you mentioned, it's quite a dark story, and it's not one that's unfamiliar to any of us. Unfortunately, we've heard so many Iranian activists who have felt that they needed to either give up or take their own life or it's the news is nothing new, as bluntly as I can put it, for Iranians anyway. But what I wanted to talk about, and the reason I really wanted to mention this is, I have a personal stance on this, and I really wish he hadn't taken his own life. And I wish so many other activists who have done the same haven't done that, because we really need them. We need them to continue fighting, and we need them to do what they did best. I mean, Kianoosh had been a journalist, an activist. He was so vocal against the Islamic Republic. He fled to Norway. He was imprisoned, tortured, talked about all of that, only to return back to Iran because of family obligations and things like that, and then be arrested again, tortured again, all these things. But his stories, what he was able to share with the world is exactly what we need. I think, taking his life, as heartless as this sounds, it really doesn't do anything. I mean, sure, there's an uptick in social media coverage, and people are outraged and all that. But then what? We've lost someone who could have been a real,
Oh, we're talking about it right now. Not to validate what he did. But,
no, absolutely. But I mean, we're talking about it because I wanted to say this. I really wanted to have this conversation and say, use this platform and say that we really do need individuals like him, and we need that fight to continue. And in his own words, one of the last things he said is, long live Iran, but we can't have that without individuals who continue that fight.
I suspect you understand why he would want to
course.
Get to that point. But yeah.
I really do. But I think in the grand scheme of things, and we've talked about this so many times over the course of the Women Life Freedom movement, we've talked about it in different occasions, that, the social media and movements like this, it's great, but there needs to be bigger change. There needs to be advocacy. There needs to be activism. There needs to be education. Things like that are what are really going to, I think, make an impact.
The hardest part, I mean, obviously it's heartbreaking learning, and you read about him and you just go, Jesus, this is horrible.
Yeah.
It's horrible when anyone takes their own life. It's horrible when somebody is an activist who was doing essential work, as you say. But maybe one of the hard parts of it is you kind of have to conclude that he got to a point where he thought resistance is futile.
Else, yeah.
Right? And that's difficult. That's difficult to hear. I always say that people who are activists, one of the things I appreciate about them is that they're ultimately optimists.
Yes.
They're the people who think, if you're not an activist if you don't think change can come. You're an activist because you think you can make a difference, because change can come. So when someone who has been on those front lines goes, I'm out, this is that doesn't bode well, for our hopes and dreams of change, right?
I want to carry that optimism, though.
Yes.
And continue to say that, let's not give up, and let's continue the fight, and let's make sure that we hold on to whatever minimal optimism we all have, and make sure that we can continue.
Yes. And rest in peace, Kianoosh.
Rest in peace, Kianoosh.
Anything else you wanted to say?
That's about it.
Something
hopefully next
lighter?
week
Has there been an Ebby concert or something?
I won't be wearing red next week, hopefully.
So you have one shirt. Actually, you won't be here next week.
I won't be here next week.
You're taking 2 weeks to go and
move. Yes.
To move into, yeah. So we'll miss you next week.
Thank you.
Let's get to Bijan Kian and Ari Aramesh in just a moment. But first, a shout out to one of our sponsors. Where's the sponsor music, Super P? It's coming. I can feel it. There it is. Hey, a big thank you for one of our amazing sponsors of this show, Zed Design Studio. Zed Design Studio, located here in Toronto, specialize in designing and manufacturing high-quality, custom-sized screen dividers, wall panels, and stunning 3D wooden wall art. They say their mission is to help businesses and homeowners transform their spaces into unique environments that reflect their personal style, meet their functional requirements. Every piece they make is crafted with care, ensuring it enhances the look of a room while serving practical purposes like dividing spaces, reducing noise. They love working closely with their clients to bring their ideas to life. Whether you want to add a touch of charm to your home or make a statement in your office, their custom designs are there to help you create the perfect atmosphere. Now, we have a personal stake in this because they have created a Roqe Media
incredible
what you call it?
Art piece?
Art piece.
Yeah.
An art piece of a face with headphones, listening to headphones. that is now in our Roqe hub. It's got a prominent place that is absolutely stunning.
It's the first thing I noticed when I came in today.
Well, it's the first thing anyone's going to notice.
Beautiful.
It's a stunning piece. We're going to take videos of it and show it off forever. It's just an absolutely beautiful piece that lights up with the color red from underneath, the Roqe colors, black and red. So big thank you to Zed Design Studio for the work they do, for the work we've benefited from here. And if you are interested in any of this, if you're in an office space out there, or you've got kind of a space where you want something unique and very, very special, just check out their stuff if you go to Instagram, ZDS or ZDS, if you're in the US, ZDS_Inc. On Instagram. Big thank you to Zed Design Studio. All right, Pegah, shall we get to the great Trump debate vis-a-vis Iran and Iranians? Here we go. All right, here we go. Well, just a week after a landmark election in the United States, many Iranian expats are naturally wondering what this will mean for Iran and for possible change to come to Iran with respect to freedom and democracy. Is the election of Donald Trump redux a dangerous new step that will scuttle the benefits of a nuclear deal that was containing the current regime? Or will the new president's more aggressive approach to foreign policy and maximum pressure be what Iranians need to create the conditions for change on the ground in Iran? To discuss and debate, I am joined by two prominent Iranian-Americans who are no strangers to these questions or to each other, albeit coming from different sides of the political fence in America. First up, he is a Democratic Party supporting Iranian-American lawyer and TV commentator, and the founder and managing member of Aramesh Law. He holds a doctorate of jurisprudence from Stanford. He has contributed articles to publications such as the New York Times, Stanford Lawyer Magazine, the Huffington Post, the Diplomatic Courier. He frequently appears on networks such as CNN, BBC, Fox News, MSNBC, and Al Jazeera, and offers insights on national security, foreign policy, and legal matters. He is a graduate of Stanford Law School, the London School of Economics, and the University of California, Berkeley, and he's currently in Washington, D.C. Hello, Arash, Ari Aramesh.
Hi, I'm blushing already, Jian.
I mean, could you have gone to more schools? Is it possible to go to more schools?
No, I needed all those degrees to be able to articulate a sentence coherently. So I think that's just enough schooling for me.
We've been looking forward to having you on the show for some time, Ari. Thanks for doing this, and it's great to have you here. And he is an experienced chairman of the board and global business leader and former U.S. senior official with over 30 years of experience across public, private, and nonprofit sectors. Twice confirmed by the U.S. Senate, he served in senior roles under the 43rd, 44th, and 45th presidents of the United States and chaired the audit committee for a U.S. government agency. He also held key economic roles in California, including director of foreign investment and economic development commissioner. He obtained his degree from the University of Brighton in Sussex, England, before pursuing further education at Harvard, Oxford, and MIT. He is a former senior fellow at the U.S. Naval Postgraduate School. He has lectured at top institutions such as National Defense University, George Washington U, Georgetown, American University, UBC, California State University, and many more. Currently in California, welcome to the show, Bijan Kian.
Thank you so much, Jian. You know, people listening to you would say, if he's gone to school for so long and has studied so hard, how come he doesn't know anything? And that's the explanation. I keep going to school, hoping to learn something. The more I attend school, the less I know. And this is not Persian Tarov. It's true.
That sounds like Persian Tarov, actually.
I'm just delighted to be with you.
I appreciate the modesty starting off this something of a debate that we're going to have, and I suspect.
Let me say something else that's important. People often see me and Aramesh, and they say, "Wait a minute, this is not exciting. These guys are friends. They actually agree with each other on a lot of things. They're not gladiators. We want to see blood. We want to see people tear each other apart. And, we don't do that. We don't tear each other apart. We try and learn from each other. And It's always a pleasure to get into hard arguments with Ari, real hard arguments, and disagree with Ari, but never stopping to respect him as a scholar, as someone who loves freedom. He has kind of a different way of fighting for freedom, uh, but we're good. We'll fight. We'll fight when we disagree with each other.
All right. Well,
without fear, without hesitation.
Thank you, Bijan. We're out of time now. I appreciate all that you've said. So that's it. That's where let's get into this, guys. And I appreciate the wonderful words from you, Bijan. And I know that the sentiments are reciprocated by Ari. The question at hand that we're talking about today is will, in fact, the name of the show, will Trump foster regime change in Iran? Will President Trump in his second term enable abet regime change in Iran? Before we get there, first things first, and before we get into this debate, let me address the Iranian community and where support lies. It feels like there has been, in my view, a realignment in the political affiliations of Iranian expats. If it used to be the case that a plurality of Iranians outside of Orange County, a plurality of Iranians were prone to voting Democratic in the U.S., were prone to voting for the Liberal Party here in Canada, this was the immigrant expectation, that has shifted. And I on last week's show, I told the story of how just a month ago we did one of our Roqe live episodes in front of a live audience, a diverse group of 400 Iranians, different ages, different demographics, in the audience. In Canada, ostensibly a progressive country, in Toronto, the most multiracial, multicultural city of the world and known as a progressive city. And when I mentioned who will you be voting for, or who would you be voting for if you were in the United States, to this audience, almost unanimously, the place erupted in favor of Donald Trump. Now, that's an interesting thing to hear in Toronto. But it definitely was informative in terms of where the Iranian community, not exclusively, of course, but seems to be. Ari, when I tell that story, does it surprise you?
Not at all. And I'd like to disagree off the bat with Bijan real quick. Yes, we do learn from each other, but I do most of the learning. I met Bijan about 3 election cycles ago, and he had just finished your last tour as on the board of the Import-Export Bank. We were on BBC debating politics, and we lost that night. Hillary lost, and I was devastated. And so we had a really good chat, and a lifelong, hopefully, friendship was formed, and more of a mentor-mentee relationship, not just a friendship. So that goes without saying that we have disagreements fundamentally, but there are 2 things. A, politics, unlike what you see on Twitter or social media, where people take it way too personally, politics is the art. It's the art of getting the well, they say soldiering is the art of doing the unthinkable, and politics is the art of getting somebody else to do the unthinkable for you. So in this sense, we have differences of opinion, differences in values, differences in how we want to approach things, but there are some core beliefs. We both believe in the U.S. Constitution. I think that's stars and stripes in the Constitution is the first, middle, and last loyalty that we both have. Secondly, we both believe in freedom. Now, I'd like to, spread. It's hard to spread freedom like sprinkle around the world, but we do believe that the more free countries out there, the better they would serve U.S. interests. It's not just a charity sort of wish. It's a practical and pragmatic policy goal to make sure that there are more democratic, transparent countries. And last but not least, let's not forget, Iran is very close and dear to both our hearts. And so I think neither one of us has been back for 2 or 3 decades at least, or maybe even more, maybe even longer. But again, it does matter how U.S. policy as the most powerful country on earth affects the region. So going back to why Trump is popular, there is
in Toronto. In Toronto,
overall, I would say why Republicans in general and Trump in particular are popular amongst Iranian expats. First and foremost, and I want to start with the most important reason and then go to the least important reason. I think the most important reason is just right behind us, and that was the killing of Qasem Soleimani. and Abu Mahdi Mohandes and his entourage. This guy was, as I think, was it Rubio or was it? He was saying that Zarif is not the foreign minister. It's Qasem Soleimani who calls the shots. It's him. So killing him, a guy who led the IRGC Quds Force, took it from a battalion, turned it into a brigade, from a brigade to a division, and then eventually created the IRGC Quds Force. And very close to Khamenei, that was a big deal. Second was the maximum pressure campaign. Trump came in. A lot of people viewed the Obama administration's policies as too soft, sometimes too not transparent enough towards Iran, shipping cash, JCPOA, and then Trump pulled out and imposed maximum pressure. So a lot of Iranians have appreciation for the fact that Trump really knew how to sort of be tough with mullahs who don't necessarily understand negotiations and mutual respect and one-on-one talks. Now, the second reason, which is the second most important reason why Iranians overall prefer Republicans over Democrats, or Trump in particular, is the history of sort of the Republican Party and the Democratic Party. Well, it happens that it was a Democratic president in power when the Shah of Iran, many of whom have very good memories during his life when he was in power. That's when the revolution sort of deposed him. And so Jimmy Carter was president. Many, myself included, would attribute some major policy mistakes, such as actually validating the revolutionaries, sending envoys to talk to them, not really backing the Shah as he should have. I would say something similar to what Obama did to Mubarak, in 2011, pulled the rug from underneath him. And so, and the quite big question is, do we want to have a transition to democracy slowly, yet with stable, you want to call them dictators that are for us? Or Nixon used to say he's a son of a bitch, but he's at least our son of a bitch. That's that sort of saying. So that's the second reason. I think there's a historic narrative. Now, I'm not going to get into this Uncle Napoleon, and to your audience, that's the master conspiracy theorist Persian character that thinks everything is a conspiracy. Yeah. I don't want to get into this, that Democrats are pro-regime and all that, but there's a difference. But again, overall, I think these are the two.
But Ari, just to, before I bring in Bijan, just to push back slightly, it's not my recollection that, of course, there have always been Iranians that support Republicans, and absolutely that narrative of the 79 revolution, Carter, that'll be part of it. But it's my contention that certainly even in the last election in 2020, we were doing this show, we were assessing what was going on, even in the midterms again, and it seemed like there was a polarization, at least in the Iranian community, that there were a bunch of Iranians who stick with the Democrats, and there were a bunch of Iranians who are Republican and always have been. It just didn't feel that way this time. In other words, it feels like much the way, and I said this in my essay last week, much the way a lot of the narrative has been in the autopsy of this recent election has been around how the Latinos surprisingly voted disproportionately, at least given where they were before, for Trump, that if Iranians were a bigger cohort in the United States and North America, that would be the story as well, that Iranians, how is this possible? These people, wasn't there a Muslim ban? Isn't this guy anti-immigrant that went Trump? And I feel like there has been something of a realignment, and I would argue it's partly because of the Biden administration's actions after Mahsa Amini and a feeling of futility. Let me bring you in, Bijan, to first on that question of the reaction we got in Toronto, which I have to say surprised all of us because we live here and this is generally a liberal place, and the Iranians have a lot of diversity of opinions that usually we didn't expect this crowd to be pro-Trump in the way they were. But secondly, on this question of whether you feel like there's been a realignment in your view.
I think you know a lot more about how people feel in Toronto than I do. But what I observe from my place here in California is that Canadians are fed up with your prime minister. They are fed up with the nonsense of, don't worry about this. Let's do some dance here. Let's jump up and down and paint our face and do something. I want to be like this group. I want to be like that group. I want to be a chameleon for all of you, changing to all kinds of different colors. People are fed up with that. in the United States, people are fed up with, oh, it's important to make sure that we have one of every kind here. Let's do this, Model 1, a Model 2, Model 3, or 4. Wait a minute. We're trying to find a pilot for a 787. It really doesn't matter what color they are. It doesn't matter how tall they are. It doesn't matter what they think. We need someone who can fly this thing and save lives. So I think people have come, Jian and Ari, to the realization that a bunch of nonsense was really cluttering the scene for a long time. People are sick and tired of that. Of course, liberal democracy is the ideal that everybody wants to follow, but what is this vogue? What is this business of Jian? The way you talk really offends me. So change the way you talk.
No, I was going to say the same thing, by the way. I'm offended too, actually.
Yeah. So you see, how long are we going to limit free speech under the guise that what you said just hurt me? Okay, so what should I do? If I say it differently, it's going to hurt somebody else. So civility and reason had left us for a long time. I'm not going to get into specifics, but you're asking for a reason. Why the shift? They're fed up.
But that's what's interesting. What's interesting about what you're saying, and I know I'd like to hear from Ari on this too, is implicit in what you're suggesting is that it wouldn't be a surprise necessarily that Iranians don't only vote on Iran policy. That we're human beings who can vote on economics or social policies or whatever. But is it yours? In other words, Bijan, how much do you feel that the Iranian-Americans that you know that their voting preference, say in this election, would be guided by what the policy will be with respect to Iran and wanting change from this murderous regime and all of that? And how much is it just based on what you're talking about, discussed with wokeism or wanting economic policies to change or abortion or anything else? Bijan.
Oh, Iranian Americans and Iranians everywhere are humans. They miss their aunties. They miss their family. They want to go back to Iran. They want to enjoy the Hormuz Sabzi. They want to get together with the family. They see this as their right to be able to travel back and forth easily. And when the so-called Muslim ban came about, I think there was a distortion in that definition. Why is it called a Muslim ban when there's no restriction for the Saudis to travel to the United States? Not a Muslim ban. It's a technical problem of not being able to share intelligence. You have a government that provides no information, nothing is reliable, anybody can get in. So yeah, there are restrictions, but it was wrong to call it a Muslim ban. And who's responsible for that? Media. You packaged it. You put a nice spin on it, Muslim ban. So for their beliefs, for the lack of ability to go visit their family and them coming here, they turned against Trump. They called the Muslim ban.
Ari,
it was not.
Ari, how much do you think Iran policy defines how Iranians vote in say, the United States?
For expats, I think that's the dominating feature. For the non-expats, it's one of several. And I wanted to qualify my previous statements. I think there's a significant advantage of Republican over Democrat amongst recent arrivals and expats, as opposed to those who grew up here. I think, and I get this either from, we have now a congresswoman I know from my Stanford days, Jian Sudi. She's a Democratic congresswoman from Arizona. We have a lot of Democratic activists in Southern California and Virginia. So I think, I'm not saying there are not a lot of Republicans in this generation too, there are, but I would say the majority of, if you're a recent arrival or an expat, definitely tilting more Republican. Iran policy dominates how you vote, not abortion, not gay rights, not the economy, not U.S. national security. That could be one of them. Let me go back.
Sorry, can I just ask, how do we define expat? When are you no longer an expat?
That's a very good question. I define, if you're still deeply attached to what happens in Argentina, you're an Argentine expat. If you're deeply attached and raise money for political opposition, I'm not part of the opposition, I don't comment on domestic Iranian politics. I read about it the same way I read about Russian politics. I probably know about Moldova right now more than I do about what's going on in Pezeshkian's cabinet, because I've been following the Moldovan election. I've been there a couple dozen times. So, but does it mean that I care about Moldova more because I've been there more? No, of course not. On the other hand, it's a fact that when I vote, my priorities are, how is this going to affect the U.S. economy, the U.S. national security, LGBTQ rights, abortion, civil rights. What's really dear to me are justice system, the U.S. attorneys and U.S. judges. Iran is one of them, but it's definitely not on the top. So I would say expat is someone who still has direct ties.
Okay.
Either thinks about one day going back, or it has direct ties. And again, I just made up this definition.
Yeah,
so Bijan, if you could give a better definition.
In a way, I would argue that we're all expats because I don't know any Iranians that don't feel a connection somehow to being Iranian. But I understand your definition. I'm sorry I cut you off. You were in the middle of explaining. Go ahead, Ari.
To be honest with you, I forgot what I was saying. So yeah,
we were talking about why Iranians vote and whether it's how much Iran policy dictates that.
Right. So I think another effective sort of feature of Trump's popularity was he did a good job reaching out to the Iranian community. He tweeted in Farsi a few times. Listen, he's a much better marketer. I mean, he knows how to. One of the biggest problems I got with my own party, and again, if you're a Democrat, you're not necessarily a leftist. Democratic Party is a very large party. I see myself sort of in the center right, but again, sort of a classical liberal. And so one of the biggest problems I got with the party is their messaging. They have a very hard time packaging an effective message. They go on these diatribes of 20,000 letter character tweets about we shall bequeath upon the economic policy. Take it easy, man. Look at how Trump tweets. I'm the best. The economy was the best under me, and you're going to do really well. People get it. People understand it. He did the same thing with Iranians. He reached out. He said, I'm one of you. I stand with you. I stand by you. I'm not saying Obama or Biden didn't do that. They didn't do it as effectively. Or when Obama had the opportunity during the Green Movement to make a decisive decision, he was getting advice from certain places that are even accused of being lobbies. And I'm choosing my words carefully. Here's lawyer who are accused of being lobbies for the Islamic Republic. That told him, no. If you do that, they're gonna crush the uprising. They were gonna quench and crush them regardless, Mr. President. But you should have gone out there and supported them. That's what you should have done. Same thing happened with Biden.
Ari, on this question of whether, for me, I mean, I've talked about this publicly. I don't vote in the United States, and I never tell people my voting intentions. But throwing a Nowruz garden party,
if you wanted to.
Throwing a Nowruz garden party in the middle of the Massa Amini uprising, as the Biden administration did, was almost was unforgivable for me to a certain extent. And so that would be something that would be factored into me, whether if I were to be voting in the United States, that would be a question mark for me. Am I going to vote regardless of whether I'm pro-choice or pro-environment or all the other things I might be? We had a letter writer, Ari, in response to my essay last week, a woman named Tess, I won't give the last names here, but said, I think most Iranians were pretty upset with Trump. I think she means that generally. But the Democrats gave $6 billion to the terrorist regime of Iran to kill more people and start a war in Israel. I think that's where the support for Trump comes from. Ari, does that sound fair to you?
I got a problem with that. I'm not okay with let's compartmentalize these different arguments. So on the one hand, why did the U.S. give $6 billion? Now, forget about the money part for a second. If you have a U.S. passport and you're under the protection of this flag, the U.S. government should come get you, should do whatever they can do to release you. The same way we just got back a lot of our hostages from Russian prisons. We had a prisoner exchange. Some really notorious Russians were released, and then we got some of our U.S. citizens back. Now, giving $6 billion, could it have been negotiated differently? That's a whole different story. But again, if you followed Russian, especially a sort of anti-Putin media, you would have seen how furious so many people were that we let go of a Russian weapons dealer, arms dealer, and a couple of Russian FSB and GRU sort of operators in Germany who had committed murder to release our own hostages. They were furious, just like Iranians were when, we got 5 U.S. citizens back. But again, I think some of these Iranians don't see these guys as U.S. citizens. They think they're Iranians. They have a U.S. passport. They have taken the citizenship oath. Their citizenship is as valid as mine, Bijan's, Donald Trump's, and Barack Obama's, and George Washington's, for that matter. So we should if wherever they go, the U.S. flag goes to protect them. Having said that, I heard someone say if Trump was there, he would have negotiated differently. Well, he released 5,000 Taliban fighters. I mean, let's be realistic. Has the Biden administration made so many mistakes? I think so. The big problem was not the $6 billion, but the hundreds of billions of dollars they allowed them to sell oil. That was the bigger problem, not the $6 billion. The $6 billion was a chunk of change. It was allowing them to be able to sell oil again after Trump had sort of choked them of their oil revenues. They should have never done that. I think the last time Bijan were in London, I said Trump is now, when Biden won, I said Trump is now sitting on Jumhuriyat Islami, on Islamic Republic, with his knees. And I hope Biden does not get off of it, of their chest. And he got off their chest,
But Ari, you're a Democrat. Were you having conversations within your party with your cohorts about this?
A minority of Democrats. And again, there's another thing. The isolationist streak in the Democratic Party is rather strong, the same way now you see in the MAGA movement, that isolationist streak. So there are 2 reasons. Reason number 1, just like Vietnam, it took we pulled out of Vietnam in 73, Saigon fell in 75. I mean, we pulled out, meaning combat forces. The first major engagement is 91. That's the Persian Gulf. Yeah, you got Grenada, you got Panama, but those are Bijan knows better. That was like 82nd and the 75th Ranger Regiment and some Marines. But having a major engagement took the country, another 16 years. 75 to 91. Sorry, that's 16 years, right? We just had Iraq and Afghanistan. The American public are not really that interested in another war, and or they're more isolationist. But second thing, and this is my key fundamental difference with a lot of people on the left, they view, and I'm quoting someone who's a known Persian leftist, and he says, and he works at a think tank and he writes, and he's like, kind of involved. He says, American foreign policy is fundamentally racist. Oh, come on, man, get out of here. I see America as a source of good. I see American presence. There's a reason, we choose to serve in public service, in the military, in national security sort of places, whatever, business. I see America as a reason for doing good, not bad. I see, America makes mistakes, but again, I see American presence. I think back in the day, and let me finish this by this quote. They used to say back in the day, where America goes, freedom goes. General McConville, who was the last chairman of he was the last chief of staff of the Army, right before General Lloyd George. He just retired 2 years ago. From Quincy, Massachusetts, the home of John Quincy Adams, our 6th president, and John Adams, our 2nd president. Quincy has produced 3 4-stars in one generation. You got Milley,
all right.
McKinsey. Yeah. Anyhow, long story. But he says, where American soldiers go, freedom stays. And that's the main difference between, I think my party is ashamed of American, not my party, the left is ashamed of American influence, American foreign policy,
yes,
and expanding American influence. And I have a problem with that. Yes. I think wherever we go, things get better, not worse.
Bijan, with respect to, touching on what Ari was saying, and with respect to, again, the last few years, because they've been dynamic ones for the global Iranian community, the diaspora, particularly after the killing of Mahsa Amini, particularly with the Women Life Freedom movement and protests that were engaging Iranians in an unprecedented way around the world. Part of the chant, part of what came out of that was that reformism was dead, that the idea of doing a deal with this regime, everyone kind of agreed, notwithstanding some certain types who work with particular policy groups, et cetera, that ship has sailed, and we shouldn't engage in that way. And yet The Biden administration seems to have been within the last year. I mean, we were hearing all kinds of things about this rapprochement of wanting to get back into a deal, get back into a JCPOA, deal with this regime again. Possibly there's more of a reformist president now in Pegah Kian. Do you think that became a problem for the Biden administration vis-a-vis how Iranians in America wanted to vote?
I think Biden administration in particular and the Democrat Party in general have been influenced just like the Republicans and the Republican Party, but a bit too much. The reaction just saw on November 5th was America in general coming back and saying, look, I don't like what I see here. Why are you doing this? Why are you endorsing an influence operation in the United States made out of people who are at best, keeping their own interests and not anybody else's? What do you seek to accomplish by that? What do you seek to accomplish by having an entity? And I'm not going to be ashamed to mention them. What is this international crisis group business? Why is there a revolving door of people coming in and out, advising on both sides? Why are some certain organizations in the United States get to go to Vienna to be part of the conversations, to be trusted? Are they working on both sides? What's going on here? People see these things. Perceptions do matter. What is the perception of President Carter in the eyes of most Iranians? Most Iranians. What is the perception of President Obama? We all remember and wonder, is all of this organic? Is it natural? Is it influence? What is taking place? What is taking place when Madeleine Albright comes and announces, I think it was in 1988, says, 1953, the United States helped remove the democratically elected. Nothing in that sentence was true.
Okay, but who is the Biden administration being influenced by?
Why did she lie?
Who was the
Why did she lie?
Bijan John, who was the Biden administration being influenced by? When you talk about they're influenced by groups, who are you talking about? What are you talking about?
Well, you tell me. Why is President Clinton all of a sudden dusting off 1953 again at this time and coming out repeating the complete nonsense that there was a coup assisted by CIA? Spies lie because nobody's watching what they do. And those two guys lied. And the world has been repeating a big lie ever since. And, why do they do these things? The Democrat Party has a problem. And I know Ari, like a very good, loyal party activist and a smart guy, is trying to make it okay. But it's not okay. It's not okay to allow this much influence on a party. And then you look at the justice system, selectively picking up those that they don't like, and they question everything they've done.
Bijan, can I ask you a direct question? Do you believe that there should be? Do you believe that the U.S. should make a deal with this regime in Iran?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
Why? Because this regime has a nature, and I will go on repeating this forever. They lie because they're allowed to.
Okay.
They're instructed.
A lot of people will agree with you, but we're not so sure whether Trump would agree with you. There's a presumption that Trump is tough on Iran, but it's never quite easy to figure out exactly what he'll do because he says contradictory things. So in September, a month ago, a couple of months ago, at a campaign stop in New York City, he said he was open to talk with Iran and that we have to make a deal because the consequences are impossible. We have to make a deal. So, I mean, this is where people kind of go, well, how do we actually know that Trump is the panacea?
Let me respond to that. No self-respecting head of a state is going to get behind a podium and say, I am going to do regime change in your country. No one would do that. So please understand that ambiguity is a tool of diplomacy. Let us all understand that no self-respecting leader, military, civilian, diplomat, otherwise, would come and say, tomorrow at 3 p.m., I'm going to attack your critical infrastructure. No one would say that. Talking is an essentiality in politics.
But if
Talking
he
does not
agrees with the
solve
policy of maximum pressure,
Well,
it's a
I can
strange
tell
thing
you
to
this.
say, isn't it? To say,
Trump
well,
is
let's.
going to do a deal. Trump is going to do a deal, and in that deal, Islamic Republic will not survive. That's a trend. Do you know Trump to be a good loser? Look at him. Prosecuted, shot at, they attempted to kill him, but he doesn't give up. But is he a loser? Is he someone that would go into a deal just for the sake of the deal and losing? No. I assure you.
Ari, do you agree?
Not necessarily. I think a deal with Iran would be bad. I think I agree with that, and Bijan and I are on the same page. I think the Islamic Republic, it's an inherently anti-American and a problematic regime. It's an ideological system. Yeah, they're interested in survival. They're not homicide. They're not suicidal, but definitely homicidal. And when you reach out to them, and they can manage to get something from you, as soon as they have the upper hand, they're going to come back and bite you. So that's a problem. I think what works for these guys is more sticks, and not a whole lot of carrots. And I would say the same thing about Putin. I would say the same thing about a lot of these sort of thuggish regimes around the world. Let's go to Trump. Let me just go back to what transpired this week. I was very pleasantly surprised by seeing Congressman Mike Waltz. He's a Green Beret. You got Marco Rubio. He's Armed Services and Foreign Relations Committee, and even Stefanik from upstate New York. So these three national security appointments, respectively, National Security Advisor, State Secretary of State, and then U.S. Ambassador to the UN. Tough on Iran, tough on China, tough on Russia. Good, I like that. And then again this week, a day later. And I go up on Fox quite often, but I gotta say this: Pete accent, bro. Seriously, Army National Guard. Pete has it. What are the qualifications? I'm not really sure. I mean, he's a really nice guy. He's a good host for Fox, weekends, Fox and Friend weekends. But then again, it's much better than Tulsi Gabbard. She's quite a piece of work. I mean, she goes and visits Assad and consoles with Bashar al-Assad, but. Or what's next? I just saw a group called a Jewish group against anti-Semitism that's been very active the past couple of years, saying, hey, if there are rumors he wants to appoint Tucker Carlson as press secretary, if that happens, we've got a problem with that. This replacement theory stuff. So Trump has got this streak that the first three, I'm very, very happy with Waltz, Rubio, Stefanik. This is going to be a tough team. And then you got these other guys. How does that work? I don't get it. I mean, you want people like Bijan, who are serious national security people, to run the show. So,
well, the reason I'm partly shying away from general conversations around Trump and Biden and the new appointments, et cetera, is because we can get that in so many places. I mean, you can turn on, right now it's 24/7 on Fox or CNN, et cetera. And I'm that's why I'm sort of shifting us towards more Iran specific conversation around how Iranians are affected by this, since that's the focus of our show. But I hear you. But Ari, does it sound like, so you're not bothered by Trump saying that when he comes to New York City and saying, yeah, we'll do a deal? I mean, it seems like there's a flippancy there that worries some people who are committed to there not being a new deal, right?
I am bothered by that because I'm not quite convinced. Again, the reason I mentioned his appointments are that's a signal that he is less likely to compromise. On the other hand, I don't know. This is the guy who did what he did with Kim Jong-un. We didn't get much for it. We legitimized a brutal dictator. His track record shows pretty good, tough action against the Islamic Republic of Iran. But he said several times, hey, I want to make you the richest country on earth. These are really, there's no reason it should be isolated. Put away your nuclear. What's that?
In a free Iran.
No.
That doesn't want to make the mullahs the richest people on the earth.
He said, and I quote, he said, you put away your nuclear deal and you could be the richest country in the world. I mean, this is a quote.
They'll die. Trump is going to do a deadly deal with the Islamic Republic.
I hope you're right. I really hope you're right, because you and I are both, in agreement that we want to see
No, I
these guys
don't want to
gone.
promote the idea of Trump the savior. It's a dangerous, dangerous assumption or expectation. People of Iran, we will never, ever be able to see peace as long as Islamic Republic is in place. Trump
Agreed.
knows that. Believe me, Trump knows that. I've worked, Jian, but I worked for him. On the first day, he gave us two orders. He said the first day, not the first day, first hour, I want a draft of an executive order on two things, two executive orders. Iran policy, move the embassy to Jerusalem immediately. Immediately. We got that order. I know this man to be of that mindset. Now, I'm going to expect him to say, I'm not going to do any deal. I'm going to throw out the diplomacy. I'm just going to go to war and bomb Iran. No.
Bijan, let me tell you. First of all, I mean, I want to focus. We're focusing on Trump because he's now the president, and we spent the last few years being quite critical of the Biden administration. So this is why the focus is here. I want to give you two things to react to, Bijan, because you're good at this in terms of reacting. But these are the kind of comments that we hear. This was also written on our as in response to my essay last week. This is from Sina, and I want to quote him to you and get your reaction, Bijan. As an Iranian-American who did not vote for Trump, I vaguely understand why some or many Iranian-Americans voted for Trump. I think they believe Trump will help bring down the Islamic regime in Iran, which is a pipe dream. I can tell you with certainty that Trump does not give a fuck about Iran. As a matter of fact, Trump would take a photo opportunity with Khamenei if it helps his ego, like he did with the North Korean leader. It is a pipe dream that any foreign country will make the mullahs fall and hand democracy to Iran. Bijan, how do you...
Can I say something really quickly? Just the two emails you read, the first one was an expat. This dude grew up here. Big difference. You can tell from the writing, from the way from grammatical errors from the writing. I just want to see and the attachments. To her, the 6 billion was the biggest problem. To this dude, probably some domestic issues and half. But expat versus someone who grew up here, my apologies, Bijan.
Go ahead, Bijan. Your reaction to that.
First of all, I'm not playing nice. We have to respect people's opinions, regardless of how informed their opinion is. It doesn't matter, But I will invite Tina to ask herself.
Sina.
You look Kian Felak's mom right in the eye and talk like that? Seriously? That's the difference between someone who doesn't relate to the pain of people in Iran and is talking about some theoretical, ideological something. I respect that, but she's dead wrong. Tina, you're dead wrong.
Okay, I think it was actually...
Come and talk to me. I'll tell you why you're dead wrong.
It was actually Sina. I think it's a gentleman named Sina. But
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
No, different.
Sina is dead wrong.
Bijan, let me give you another person, and this is actually from Ari's party. Many people believe that, or some people at least, that Trump's policy on Iran was not effective at all in its first administration. Here's what Democratic Senator Chris Murphy said this year. President Trump's policy towards Iran was a disaster. They got closer to a nuclear weapon. Their proxies didn't get any weaker. U.S. troops came under attack in a way that they were not prior to Trump's presidency. And our coalition that had been carefully built around the nuclear agreement, ready to be used to go after Iran's ballistic missile program or support for their proxies, had vanished. How do you guys react to that? Bijan, first you.
I think Mr. Murphy is... expressing sour grapes. What's the reason for failure? Are you kidding me? Islamic Republic went bankrupt almost during Trump. Trump is right. Look at the numbers. All the injections, all the life-saving tubes were sent by the Democrats. I can understand that. They've lost, and they're trying to justify all the beliefs, their imaginations. We've got to be nice to these people. These people deserve to be negotiated with, given money, power, so they can go support Hamas to kill Israelis. No, I'm sorry. Too much nonsense. beyond the level of tolerance. No, Trump's policy was effective. Trump's policy was effective. The problem was Europe preferred to do business. I know, I'm in that business. Amos Mueller of Germany dedicated $1 billion to promoting a trade with Islamic Republic growing at a 15% annual year-on-year growth. Trump's policy was the best policy. Getting out of an agreement that was based on lies. It was not an agreement. The language of JCPOA. Why? Because it was drafted by people who came out of International Crisis Group who had, very, very apparent relationships with the other side. There's a lot we could say about that, Jian. Quite frankly, Mr. Murphy is wrong.
Ari,
Trump policy was effective. You will see how effective the continuation of that going to be very soon.
Okay.
Of course.
We will sit back
and criticize policies all the time, but Trump policy vis-a-vis Islamic Republic worked. They're scared. Don't you see it in their language?
Okay. I think we got it. We got it. Ari, is there anything in what Chris Murphy said there that you agree with, or are you on the same page here with Bijan in terms of Trump's first?
This is again, on most U.S. policy issues towards Iran, I'm in the minority in my own party. I'm more of the late Joseph Lieberman wing of the party or the Hillary Clinton wing of the party, and that is, with these dudes, you got to bring a lot of stakes and a couple of carrots. Don't treat them like equals. Their equals are local players, regional players. The U.S. is not an equal. Don't treat them that way. Rob Malley and those disastrous rounds of negotiations, man. I mean, I don't know how and why. I was watching this. Remember Chris Matthews, Bijan? Hardball with Chris Matthews back in. So he had a show called Hardball on MSNBC. One of my favorite shows. The guy used to work for Tip O'Neill. And so he really knew U.S. politics. In 2008, he had a guest named Kevin James. Look up this Kevin James clip because he took the guy to the cleaners. I mean, he really embarrassed him because he didn't know what Chamberlain had done in 38 in Munich. But Kevin James also said something interesting. He said, why is it that, Obama is sending somebody as his peace envoy or Mideast envoy who has written sympathetic pieces about Hamas and Hezbollah? And I always had, again, when we approach these issues with the assumption that it is our fault, it's the U.S.'s fault that we've gotten this far, then we're going to make concessions. We're going to make unjustified concessions. So that's issue number one. Issue number two, we've never had a coherent strategy about Iran. And that is part of it is the price we pay for having a democracy. Governments come and governments go. You have Carter, then Reagan, then Bush, and then Clinton, and then Bush came in and it was like, oh, crap, this is happening. Axis of evil. Oh, no, Iran is going to be next. Iran, Syria, Iraq. Whoa, what's going on? No. And then quagmire, And I'm not saying going to war is a good thing. Far from it, by the way. I was just trying to sort of tell you what was going on. Then Obama and Trump. If you continue on one path, at least for 15 years, the Iranian regime for 44 years and Khamenei for 33 years of those, or 34 years of
35,
those?
35.
35, all right, have been very coherent and consistent. Hurt American interests, hurt Israeli interests, kill Americans, get America out of the Middle East. That's their strategic goal. What is our strategic goal towards Iran? Support our allies, okay, fine, but then sometimes we don't do that really well. So that's one issue. But again, was Trump's maximum pressure campaign successful? Yes, especially if it would have been continued. You don't put your hands around someone's neck and then lift it. You don't, unless you want to go to jail and then pay the price for it. But that's a very bad example. It is. I'm not anybody to choke anybody. I'm just saying, yeah. But you don't exert a lot of pressure for you just to lift it when the other side has not done anything for you to lift that pressure. So yeah.
Ari, there's I want to come to you guys for closing statements in terms of what you see the next 4 years. But can I just, something you said, Ari, at the beginning, at the top, that stuck with me, and I wanted to come back to you on. You said, I think it was in your first answer, you were talking about you and Bijan and the things you stand for, and you said we believe in, or at least you said you believe in freedom, and that freedom, that America wants freedom in other places and democracy in other places. That's ultimately going to benefit America. A lot of people don't actually see it that way, and in fact see that there's an advantage that some of these nations see, to the U.S. might be included, to there being a dysfunctional, anti-democratic, totalitarian regime in a place like Iran, as long as it's operating in the benefits of the U.S. and so
how is it the question I always ask is, and people, and I'll give you the answer to that. How is it operating in the benefit of the U.S.? And they say, well, look, America is selling all these weapons to Saudi and to Bahrain and to Israel because there's a boogeyman. Guess what? Were they not selling weapons to Saudi when the Shah was in power? We were selling.
No, I think the answer would be, I think the answer that is, as the orthodox answer is usually that it may be too disruptive to try and create any change in Iran. We don't know what will happen. So the devil we know better. Let's just keep them contained, and who gives a fuck otherwise? That would be the answer. I think that's what people would say. So this idea that America really cares about freedom and democracy everywhere can be a bit of a canard.
Again, let me qualify my comment. America is not a charity. American foreign policy is not a charity. So, yeah, they do care about, the American foreign policy does care about freedom and human rights. But again, American political interest comes first, no doubt about it. Sometimes, if you hold free elections today in certain countries, you might have Islamists and Salafists win. I'd rather see much stability there and gradual progression as opposed to having crazies coming and taking over Mecca and Medina. So I'd much rather see step-by-step growth. So yeah, I can understand that. I'm not saying America is writing a blank check to everybody and says, hey, freedom fighters, I'm going to give you all M16s and M4s, go fight. No, that ain't happening. But is a free Iran aligned with American interests? I believe so. And if people think that Iran is being used as a boogeyman for America to sell more weapons, that's just such red herring. America can do a lot better with having, but again, a stable Iran, very quickly. If people think that the unknown, the devil well, the devil for 44 years has killed several hundred U.S. Soldiers and Marines and sailors and airmen in Iraq and Afghanistan. The devil has killed Marines and soldiers and French troops in Beirut, Israelis, and countless Iranians. Yep. That's the devil
Yep, 1,000%. Gentlemen, it's such a pleasure to have both of you on the show. I mean, you are both a joy to listen to.
I want to say something before you leave.
I'm not letting you go without my final question, and I'm coming to you first, Bijan. I mean, it's a bit of a leading question to ask you whether you're optimistic for the next 4 years, because you clearly are happy about the election results. But I would say, Bijan, do you actually believe, or do you think that we are going to see, for those people out there who are hopeful that there could be change in Iran and that we were on the precipice of it with the last uprising, etc., do you believe that may happen in the next 4 years under Trump?
Why do you say may? I will tell you this without hesitation, with all confidence. What Ayatollah Khamenei is most afraid of is not Trump. Is the people of Iran. It's the 30-year-olds who are going to finish him off. I say that with confidence. I say it with respect. People in Iran are sitting back and saying, Bijan, I don't care what you say. Ari, I like you, but I really don't care what you say either. And Jian, you're after the truth. Thank you for trying. But Trump is not going to be our savior. We are going to fight and win. And my prediction is, with confidence, not because something I've read, I know, none of that. It's a personal conviction. Iran will be free by the hand of the Iranian people. They will make the decisions. They will make the decisions.
In the next 4 years?
There's an expression in Farsi that says, Zemistan tamum mishe, ro siyahi mimone baraye zoghali. This is not a racist comment. It's about, look, I was cold. I needed the coal. You didn't help me. The winter is going to be over. but you'll be ashamed of what you did. Whoever did not stand by the side of the Iranian people in their quest for freedom, under whatever explanation, is going to be ashamed. President Obama will be ashamed. Secretary Albright will be ashamed. President Biden will be ashamed. Blinken will be ashamed. All those who stood in their way. All they're saying is, look, I don't want help from you. Just don't help the Islamic Republic. Let this be a fair fight. Don't give him money. Lift your hand from their support. That's what they're saying. My prediction is people of Iran are going to defeat this monster called the Islamic Republic in Iran. I believe that from the bottom of my heart. And it's not about Trump. Of course, I expect Trump to continue what he's been doing, winning. Trump will win. Any scenario where you're going to assume Trump is going to relent is wrong. Look at him. The man got shot twice for his ideas. Okay. He is not someone who will give up. I trust that, and I trust it because of what I've seen, not what I like to believe. So this is great. I hope we continue these talks, Jian.
Thank you, Bijan. And Ari, let me just do a final word to you. There's a lot to be debated and is getting debated around Trump for the next 4 years and a change in the administration and obviously there are a lot of people who are super excited and there are a lot of people who think this is the second coming of hell and this is a worrisome time for America, etc. But specifically on Iran policy and what on foreign policy and as you said earlier, Marco Rubio being the Secretary of State, etc. Where are you at in terms of, as a Democrat, where are you at in terms of your optimism or your feeling about the next 4 years for Iran?
I feel more optimistic every time I talk to Bijan. So and I'm not trying to be facetious. I mean that. And Bijan knows the administration better. He was head of transition for Intel. He knows the key players there. He's known them for years, actually, both military, intel, and policy. So when he says something about the sort of insides of the sort of the wheelhouse of the Trump administration, I have to believe it. And I really hope you're right, Bijan John, because if that's happening, that's good news for everybody. Now, looking back, I think, again, Mike Waltz, Marco Rubio, Stefanik, even Radcliffe. I mean, these guys are not, they're not easily persuaded to throw in the towel. On the other hand, I'm not exactly convinced about some of the more unconventional appointments President Trump is making. Overall, the issues that are very important foreign policy-wise to me are China, Ukraine, and supporting Ukraine's freedom and independence, and also making sure there is peace in the Middle East. You cannot have peace in the Middle East so long as you have a sort of a rogue regime, like a pariah state, such as the Islamic Republic of Iran running the show. They've clipped Hamas and Hezbollah. They're clipping Iran's air defenses, and they may clip its missile industry and drones. But again, the Iranian people have paid the price dearly. It's time for the regime to also meet some consequences for that, for the actions they've committed. But again, so long as you have that regime, you're going to have the Houthis and Hezbollah and Hamas in one way, one form or another. It's going to morph into something else. So it's got to be dealt with.
We all agree on that, guys. Truly a pleasure. We wanted both of you on this program and haven't made it happen for a long time now. And to have you both at once is a windfall. Thank you so much, Bijan. Thank you so much, Ari. Hope to have you back on again soon. Thanks for this.
Of course.
And to Sina, I'll say, Sina, don't worry, Iran will be free.
Good recall. Thank you, Bijan. Thanks,
awesome.
Guys. Merci.
Right. Bye, everybody.
All right. Back in the studio with Smart Pegah. Well, first of all, grateful to have Ari and Bijan on. Really didn't turn out to be that much of a debate.
I was going to say, that was the most tame and polite.
Two guys who,
loving.
First of all, went on about how much they love each other.
Exactly.
It's like, all right, well, this clearly isn't going to be one of those fiery Piers Morgan moments. Yeah.
That's right.
But they know, but I actually appreciate that. We're not looking for,
No, for sure.
smackdown Jerry Springer here, but it was interesting to me that Ari, he's a longtime Democrat, but I guess there's, unless you're of a particular stripe, reformist, we talked a bit about it in the interview just now with them. Unless you're of the particular stripe who really wants the nuclear deal, but wants to go back to the engaging with the regime, etc. There really isn't a defense of the Democrats when it comes to foreign policy, when it comes to Iran.
Right.
And so he was kind of
honest
left
about
to
it.
say, I wish everybody had voted for the Democratic Party, but not because of Iran.
Yeah. I think it's also one of the things I noticed listening to them is, they're both such believers in true democracy and an American democracy, that they both respect the parties and they respect the system and all of these things. And you could really hear it in the way that they went back and forth and respected each other's opinions, but respectfully disagreed in some places.
Yeah.
And then,
Bijan having the Cheshire cat grin on his face of somebody who's just won the presidency, the Senate, and the House. He's
That's
just
right.
looking very happy.
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, it's going to be a curious a few years.
Yeah, definitely. And I think Ari was mentioning Trump's choices of staff, if you will, and that's going to be very
We
interesting.
recorded that yesterday just before the announcement about Matt Gaetz, which we could do a whole other show
No comment.
about. These people are all hawks on Iran. So if you appreciate this notion of maximum pressure, to me, it's going to be more whether Trump himself and some of the people around him is going to allow that type of hawkish, Marco Rubio has been very outspoken about Iran and Hamas, and but Trump himself is more of an isolationist. His whole thing is we don't want to get involved, and it takes a lot of credit for that. So it'll be curious to see whether they're on a tight rein. You do what Donald wants, or whether you get to be the hawkish kind of folks you are.
Yeah, but I think that might be kind of also part of the plan is, him as figurehead and the president and, the last say, he's kind of more of an isolationist. And then you've got these big names who historically have been so outspoken and all of these things. So maybe that'll create some sort of a balance, or
Excellent.
Who knows?
Iranian and conspiration theories.
Yes, of course.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Gonna miss you in the next couple of weeks, but we'll see you in 3 weeks.
In a couple of weeks, yeah.
Pegah Ganji, smart Pegah Ganji, thank you.
Thank you.
See you, the rest of you, next week. In the meantime, we'll be sharing things on Instagram. Make sure you follow us. Thanks to the amazing team who put this show together. Super Parisa, Smart Pegah, Seppi Wonder, Savvy Roham, Tina the Photo and Video Queen. And special thanks to Bearded Omi, Talented Anahita, Methodical Kava, and Solid Samin. Thank you to all of you out there for supporting us and sharing our content. Please subscribe on any or all of our platforms if you don't do so already. Remember, you can follow us. You can watch the show on YouTube now at Roqe Media, as well as Apple and Spotify and SoundCloud and Telegram, etc. You can find us on Instagram at Roqe Media. Find me on Instagram at Jian Gomeshi. And as ever, Mizumbashi.